I truly believe Generation Alpha is actually too intelligent for the education system. And one of the things that I don't think that people who don't work in teaching realize, and also a lot of teachers don't acknowledge enough, is that these kids, right? A lot of the things that children today are doing or not doing, it's because it doesn't make any logical sense to them. They're actually much more logical thinking than the society that they live in, right? So, for example, one of the kids was having an issue in school. So like I was saying to you guys that, I teach obviously my own lessons and my own, my own things that I do in my own, business, whatever. And then I also teach for this company that's working in line with the Department for Education, pretty much allocating kids who are not doing well in the traditional system. And it's insane to me that the same exact observations I will make when I deal with kids who maybe have been in private school and whatever and still not getting the grades are the same issues I'm dealing with these kids who have been allocated to me because they have like 8 or 9 different diagnoses of all the things that they have, the ADHD, the dyslexia, all this, whatever it is, right? And autism and all these things. And a lot of the times, the reason they're struggling is because the system is illogical. So one of the kids was saying to me, right, 11-year-old, struggling in school. Why? Because they don't see the point of why they should have to sit every day for 6 hours doing something that they think is boring. Now, I appreciate that because they're intelligent, that's a waste of their time as far as they're concerned. And actually it is. If we think about this logically as adults, it is. If they're just sitting there for the sake of it, doing work that they find is way too easy, it is boring. They are kids, right? So it's our job to like foster that. So what ends up happening is a kid who doesn't see the point because they're 11, in sitting for 6 hours a day ends up disadvantaged, even though they're probably capable of far ahead of the years of what they're actually studying. This is again why I'm like, I don't actually think this whole age categorization is necessarily a good thing. Listen, we have to just ditch the system altogether and just switch everybody to homeschooling. Because if everybody was homeschooling and we're building homeschooling communities, then we would be able to, all of these issues I'm talking about would be solved. The issues of like, people saying, oh, but there's no community when you're in a homeschool. But if you're in a homeschool community, then you do get to see other kids. And you also get to learn from other kids that are different age groups. So this is you guys before, that it's good for younger kids to learn around older kids because the younger kids can be challenged if they're somebody who generally finds a lot of certain topics or areas or subjects easier. The older kids start to learn things like responsibilities and good communication skills because they are sometimes, helping or explaining or even just motivated by the idea that they are like, leading or being some kind of a role model to the younger ones and supporting them. And I've seen it work. Like I've said, I've worked in homeschooling. This is what I'm actually like really focusing a lot on in terms of education is the homeschooling, working with homeschool. And I have worked in homeschool situations. And again, you see that a lot of the times the younger kids can keep up a lot more than you think that they can. The reason they're not interested, they'd rather play their game, is because their game is more stimulating. The game is more stimulating. They're young. They have a lot of energy. They have a lot of thoughts, a lot of questions. They want to do something interesting. This is what I'm saying. And then they also can see the holes in the system. It's the same way, like I said before, a lot of kids are rebellious, not because they're rebellious. It's because they don't want to follow rules that don't make sense to them, right? And a lot of the things that we do, like, for example, I was looking, now I have to teach English. Oh my gosh, it's the horror. At this new job, and I hate it. And I'm finally understanding why I've always hated it and why I didn't like it at school, right? Because according to the national curriculum or whatever curriculums, it's not that kids are being taught this is like how you have certain skills that will benefit you in life. It's like these are certain things that you need to prove you can do for us in the way that we are telling you we want you to do it. And if you can't do it in this way that we've required out of God knows where, then you're not smart. So, like, for example, with words, when you're going through teaching English, I feel like an idiot teaching English. Can I tell you that? I feel like an idiot at the lower level. At the higher level, and this is the problem, the higher level of all the subjects, it's great for the kids. Like, it's great for them because for anybody, because then you get into something and you get to enjoy the elements. So like once you go deeper with English and you start to think about the linguistics and the origins of words and different ways of writing and different all of that, then of course that's fascinating, that's interesting, that's cool, I think. Right? I actually enjoy writing myself. I actually write a lot. I've written a lot, right, myself. So I really do see the value in writing, and just English and reading even, and all these skills. But the problem is that when the kids are being told, oh, there's these like 50 words, these 50 random words that so-and-so, whoever in the government somewhere, in the Department for Education, right, has decided is the words you need to know. And if you don't know these 50 words, you're not smart, doesn't make any sense. Because again, the kids will say stuff to me like, well, the way, like I was having a conversation with a kid earlier this week, and I love the 11-year-olds are my favorite. The 11-year-olds are my favorite age group to work with. I never was really that like specific, but now I know, especially because I mostly teach 11-year-olds now. And what I like about them is the world is very black and white in their minds, which is good. And also, they actually want to engage their brain and be stimulated. This is why they are enjoying getting caught up in all these things that we villainize them for, because it's more engaging, it's more stimulating for their mind, it's more interesting. There's a challenge element. That's why a lot of them like to play all of these games, because they're enjoying having a challenge, they're enjoying being pushed past what they find as super easy. And a lot of really intelligent kids, that's where it goes wrong for them, because you're not being challenged. And I can say that as a teacher, from my end, it's tough when you're in a classroom and you've got a classroom of say 25 kids, right? And you got some kids who will finish all the work that you've set, plus the extra work, plus the extra everything, know how to set their work out properly, write their day, underline it, do all the things they have to do. And they'll finish it in like 10 minutes. And then you'll be 10 minutes from the end of the lesson and there'll be other kids who've barely managed to write learning objectives. Do you see what I'm saying? So then again, as a teacher, how are you able to like adhere to all those kids in the structure of how the classroom is set up today and how the government asks you to do all these curriculums? Because in an informal setting, it's a lot easier, because I wouldn't have to be limited for the kids who can do further. I wouldn't be limited by, oh, this is all you have to do. And like because you're in year 6 or you're in year whatever, right? Then that's why you just have to stay here and not be challenged. But also I then can't actually help the kids enough who are struggling, who again can do it with the right amount of patience. Because that's one thing that's a big, huge chunk of teaching and working with children, is you have to have way more patience for them than they have for themselves. And you have to help them to walk through what they're doing, right? So one of the things I find a lot of times, like especially as a maths teacher, it's not that people can't do maths, it's that people don't know how to approach problem solving and just doing a lot of tasks in general. So there's a tendency to rush through to try to get to the answer, do all the calculating in your mind. You've not done any orderly steps. You've not focused on any logic. You're trying to remember like what so-and-so teacher told you. Like the number one phrase I hear from kids, I don't remember. I'm like, there's nothing to remember when logic is in the building, because all you have to do is follow the logic and keep following the logical train. So that's why I always even say to them, don't focus on what you don't know. Start with what you do know and see how that helps you figure out what you don't know, right? And then they start to be able to learn actively and think actively on their own, so they can do new tasks that they couldn't do before without having to even be told how to do them, right? And like I said, I have never seen it in all my years of teaching, of all the subjects that I've taught. And this goes for everything, that whether it was in the entertainment industry, when I was teaching, I taught dance, I taught drama, whether it was when there was a whole stint where I was teaching religious studies as well in some schools, and obviously, teaching maths and science. And again, I'm teaching the kids who have been out of school for 3 years or 2 years, and haven't done any education because of X, Y, and Z, and have 11 different diagnoses, all the way up to the kids whose parents have had them in private school, private tuition since the day they came out of the womb. The problem is always the same thing. That's what I'm realizing. And it is the system. It's the system. It's the education system. And that's why I think Generation Alpha is actually too smart for the education system. Because I get it. One of the biggest problems I feel like we have in society is when we decide that we have these traditions. And this is why I think there's a lot of tension in the world right now, especially in the Western society. There's a lot of tension because we're having tension of the world actually moving forward and things actually changing, things like technology, things that are like a lot newer, because a lot of this is the stuff that I grew up with that people older than me didn't necessarily grow up with, right? In the same way. And so again, kids have access also to their own education. So like I've said before, like how many times have we can all acknowledge, let's say this, we can all acknowledge that, like, for example, if you want to learn something like history, kids are going to learn way better from some of these really well produced, like 20-minute videos on YouTube with great animations and incredible information than they are some random textbook written again by God knows who with God knows what agenda from who knows wherever. You know what I'm saying? They're not learning skills. They're being taught to be something. And they're like, why am I being told to be and do something I don't want to do? And also, it doesn't make sense to them because they're looking at the state of the adult population. It's like, well, no offense to you guys, but you guys don't exactly look like you know what you're doing either. Right? Because I say this all the time. People be like, oh, my kids, like all the kids, they just want to be influencers now. Yeah, of course they do, because they're watching the influencers living a life of abundance. They're watching, KSI has bought a Lamborghini and he's doing this and he's doing that and he's throwing out £100 notes all over. Do you even make £100 notes? I don't think they do. I think 50s, I don't know anyway. Whatever. He's throwing out money in the middle of wherever and doing whatever. Meanwhile, and he's built that off of gaming on the internet. Meanwhile, that same child's parents is struggling to buy eggs. That same parent who went and got a degree, that same parent who went and did a master's, that same parent who has a normal, stable 9-to-5 job. And I'm nothing against those things, by the way. I'm just saying that the kids are noticing there's an issue here. How come KSI is wasting like 50 eggs, throwing them at the wall just because he thinks it's funny and he can afford to do it, but at home, they're not even able to eat properly because of how the price of eggs in the supermarket, and they're watching their parents stress and everything is stressful. So I don't know if the adult population realizes that a lot of things, and I say this from my own perspective, I'm like the oldest of Generation Z, and listen, I claim Generation Z. I don't even want to be seen as a millennial, honestly, because I actually think we're cooler down here and we're actually more forward thinking. Because people say, oh, you're really intelligent. I'm like, actually, I just think for myself, and I've grown up in an age where there's a lot of access to information that I can then use for myself that helps me to shortcut a lot of these other things. Like I've said to you guys, I work in teaching. I don't have a teaching qualification. That is the funniest part of it all, isn't it? And yet I'm the one who's being able to do the work. That the very same system, and I was literally speaking with, these people at this job that I work at, right? I was literally speaking with the HR lady, because the HR ladies have changed. Thank God. Because that other HR lady, was, I don't know. So when I found out, apparently she just left recently and there's a new lady, and the new lady's lovely, and me and her have had some really nice conversations anyway. And the conversations we're having are things like, oh, well, we only have X amount of allocated funding, so we're only able to do this for the kids. And so what's the point? The system is all broken. Parents are going to work. They're paying their taxes, right? Paying taxes in the beliefs that while they're at this job that is also, looking after their kids are getting an education, which is going to benefit them at some other point in their life, right? This is why a lot of parents have invested a lot in education. That's a conversation for another day, by the way, because the racial disparities in intelligence also has a lot to do with the dedication of the parents as to how far are they willing to go. Like, for example, I will say it now. I know that the Asian communities, South Asian, East Asian, those guys will do whatever it takes for their child to get an education. I know a mom, a family, and the dad already has a job. She has a job. She picked up another job just so she could pay whatever she needs to pay for her kids to have the education they need. They break their backs for the sake of extra education. That's why we notice the statistics. Meanwhile, when I work, sometimes I've worked with parents in the private setting, as in me doing it privately, independently outside of the system. And I work, say, with Black parents, for example, or a lot of the time, they're not willing to do as much as they want to do. They're relying on the system. They're not willing to go outside of their comfort zone or what's easy for them in order to get their children to have an education. But then when they are, it also benefits them, the kids. So even those disparities, again, it's all these things where I'm basically trying to say that the common denominator in the problems with the younger generation is the system. And the reason why the younger generation is actually going to be so much more intelligent, for those who manage to meet adults like me, who actually value them and don't just write them off, but hear them out and understand where they're coming from, they're going to be 100 times ahead. Because that's what I'm saying. I'm like teaching all these 11-year-olds at this point 16-year-old level maths. Because when they were doing the stuff that they were asked to do, it was boring. They didn't want to focus. They'd rather go and play Minecraft. They'd rather be on Roblox. They'd rather talk to their friends. They'd rather do whatever. Eat sweets, eat candy. They're not interested. They're disinterested. They're not like us adults who, and this is the thing about the adults that scares me. It scares me about getting older. Like, as an adult, it's almost like it's expected that you just accept that, like, you know, when people say like, oh, it was just accepted that everybody hates their job. It's just accepted that people, you know, that life's tough and life's hard, and we're all and like, I even asked the Lord, because it's something I've been asking the Lord, and I really believe that a lot of the reason why God has allowed my life to turn out the way that it is in this season, like in terms of like my complaints about working as a teacher, is so that I really get to understand and like be reminded of the like accepted state of living of the world. Like, the accepted state of living is that everything about living is pretty miserable as far as the world is concerned. Let's be honest. You spend most of your week going to a job you may or may not like, right? Of course. And I don't want to negate the fact that obviously we all have to do things we don't want to do. And it's not about that. And even the kids appreciate that when you explain it to them. Because I say to them all the time, like, look, this isn't going to be the fun part. This is what just has to be done in order to get us to where we need to get to. So I appreciate that it might not be the best. Acknowledgement goes a long way with kids. A long way. If you can acknowledge that what you're asking them to do is ridiculous, not tell them how, oh, this is what life will be like, because a lot of adults are like that, like trying to like, you know, give you like these negative prophecies of the future, like, oh, when you're older, life's gonna be like this, and I'm just like, dude, you're not making like any of the things that you're then recommending worth it when you're having all this extra negativity added. And like I said, now I'm of the generation. I always use the example of how when I was a kid, I was like 3 years old there on these big, huge computers with the floppy disk, kicking my little legs, playing the Elmo game on the computer. I've grown up with the internet. I've learned more on the internet than I've ever learned in education. That's the funny thing. People actually think that it's my education from the system that is the reason why I can teach. But the actual truth is I've taught myself majority of the things I've taught because I was exactly like these kids. I was exactly the kid not understanding the logic in English. Like, oh, so red and read are spelled the same way. So how am I supposed to, do you know what I'm saying? So where is the logic in that? How am I supposed to logically know that when I'm writing this or saying this, this is how it's done? And then it changes because we say, oh, the kids of today, the youth of today, whatever. Riz is now a word in the dictionary. Is it the English dictionary? It's now a word in the dictionary. So it's all just ever changing and ever evolving. So then when you're telling kids, oh no, but you have to do this and you can only write this and you can, it ebbs and flows and changes, and it makes us, the adult population, look so illogical. And I think that's where the attitude of a lot of these young folks actually comes from, is they're just looking at it all and it's like, this doesn't really make sense. And if this is what you're saying, I'd rather, because I'll be honest, that's also how I feel. I'd rather risk it all in the hopes of, you know, doing something different that might work out. At least I tried and at least my life was interesting. Then I would just settle for some, like, and this is what I've been dealing with the Lord. I'm like, Lord, I'm not prepared to just settle. This is why I always tell you guys that I live by go hard or go home. I'd rather do that than just settle. Because guess what? If I fail 100 times and then I end up doing whatever job, whatever, fine by me. I've lived a colorful life. Because I'm horrified by the idea, like the other, earlier or whatever, I saw somebody was like, make all these investments now, so when you're in your 50s, you'll thank me in 50 years or whatever. I was thinking, so I'm supposed to do all of this stuff in order to prepare for my last days to be good when I'm going to be older, I'm going to be less capable of doing things, I'm going to be like in all types of ways, right? I'm going to be being advised against probably things like skydiving for the sake of my health, my heart health and whatever, and all these other things. So it's kind of like backwards, basically, is what I'm saying. And again, the kids are all different. I don't know why we've normalized in society that we all follow one path and one path is the path that makes sense when everybody is so different. Like, so even the kids that I teach, they're all so different. So different. Some of them are so like organized and this and that. You can see how they're going to go down the certain path that they want to go down. Like one of the kids I teach wants to be a brain surgeon. And by nature, as their personality, that's what I'm saying, kids have to be observed. Like by personality, far more organized than I ever was at 16 years old, let's just say, right? Everything is organized. They're aware of the specification. They're aware of what topics they have and haven't covered throughout the year. They're keeping track of it. They highlight everything. All of their work is beautifully done. They're always asking me, please, can you send me the diagrams that we used in class today? Please, can you send me this? Do you mind marking that? You said this. They're going back through their work. They're finding the bits that they didn't understand. How can they organize? I'm like, those are the makings of a surgeon. Conscientious, competent, all of this thing, calm, orderly, all of these things. On the other hand, you have other types of kids who want to take everything apart, who want to ask 100 questions about everything, who seem scatterbrained, but they're not scatterbrained. They are mathematically thinking and could potentially become something like an engineer. Or they just like to do work with their hands. They don't really care about if they know. Like, I get it. When I was in school, there were so many topics I didn't care about. Like when we were learning about rocks, this is this type of rock and this is that type. I was like, who actually cares? That's not getting an education. That's not getting an education. Because getting an education should mean that whatever you're learning is directly putting you onto the path of where you're going to go with your career. So that's why I even say that so much of the science curriculum at the beginning, for like the first 16 years of people's lives, is irrelevant, because they're not going to go into science. They're not going to go into all of these things. They're not going to be using half this stuff on a daily basis, and they're not even taught how to do it. And as we all know, schools will teach you about Pythagoras' theorem. They won't teach you about how to do your taxes. The irony of it all. The one thing that we actually all do as an adult population. And these are the things that the kids are realizing. This is what I'm saying. So when I'm being told, this time I get sent all these long pieces of paper, like especially this new job that I work at. I get sent, oh my gosh, what the Department for Education has to say about the student, what the parent has to say, what the previous teacher has to say, what everybody has to say. Everybody has something to say and everybody has a whatever. But guess what? None of those things ever matter at the end of the day, because the problems are usually very easily solved. They're not engaged. Their actual issues are not being addressed. Even this social anxiety thing and the anxiety of it all is a huge factor in why the kids don't do well. Because I know that, for example, there's one kid who didn't do well that I teach this exam period that we just came out from, right? And we've identified that, me and her mum have identified that her overarching problem is her anxiety about doing things wrong, which in my humble opinion, based on the years I've known her and been teaching her, is because of a lot of things that have been said to her about her education. So every time she doesn't do well, every time she doesn't do things perfectly, she takes it on herself as if she's just not smart enough and she's not good enough. So then every time she goes into the exam, it's like every time her anxiety is increasing exponentially each time she does it wrong, and it knocks her confidence all the way back. And so we could work through the whole year and she could be feeling confident and whatever. As soon as you go back into you get your results, this piece of paper that there are so many variables that affect it. The exam specification. The exam specifications, right? So here's the difference for those people who don't know, who don't work in teaching or not familiar, also for parents who probably don't know the difference. So when kids are in primary school in this country, they all follow the national curriculum, which is, yes, at that point, they're all learning the same exact curriculum, right? Across the country in primary school, albeit the curriculum being a bit ridiculous. Like I said, they've just picked this certain number of words that the kids have to learn. And if you know these words, it doesn't matter if you know another 50 words that are way more difficult to spell or to use well, whatever. Because these kids a lot of the time have really vast vocabularies. I'm quite surprised. I'm like, wow, where did that word come from? You know what I'm saying? But, because they're seen to not be at that level of intelligence, because we just assume just because of their age, which again is just stupid, they might have other words or whatever that if they don't know this group of words, they're not smart, right? This is what I'm saying. So that's the national curriculum anyways. When they go from after that and until university, right? So this is now age 11 to age 18, right? From that standpoint, it's a free-for-all. There are specifications and exam boards. The exam boards choose what they want to do, which is in line with a kind of skeletal national curriculum, as in certain topics are always going to be covered in general, but certain bits are and are not used in one specification but are used in another. So it's very pick and choose. So for example, I'll give you guys an example, right? one of the exam boards, you have the AQA and Edexcel, two of the biggest, most popular exam boards, which again, I don't even know who chooses them, if it's the school or whatever, right? I definitely, when I teach myself, I recommend to the parents based on the kids, what the kid wants to do, which one is going to favor the path that's going to be better for them. If they definitely want to go into science or maths at all, they should probably do Edexcel, because generally it's a lot harder. The questions are more difficult to understand. So it's going to prepare them more for the future. If they just need to get through this thing, AQA. A lot more direct. But here's the funny thing. In Edexcel, I'll give you an example for maths, right? In AQA, they have to know how to change a recurring decimal into a fraction and a fraction back into a recurring decimal. That's one of the requirements in the specification. That isn't in the Edexcel specification, right? So think about all these other factors for kids, especially when there's things like changing schools, there's things like COVID that have happened, there's things like when you're at secondary school, you might do, and all the secondary schools are different. They all do different exam boards. So we're not all at the same point, and we don't all have the same knowledge anyway. We didn't all follow the same things at any stage, because any time, any year group, any whatever, any school, it's different. And again, the schools play to what is beneficial for them. So again, to use AQA and Edexcel as an example, Edexcel is knowingly one of the harder specifications. So private schools always do the Edexcel. In fact, they like to do the iEdexcel, which is the international Edexcel, the iGCSE or the Edexcel, because that is in line with the standards internationally. So they want the kids to be, able to learn internationally, whereas the AQA definitely doesn't go as hard as the Edexcel. So private schools will often choose Edexcel because it's harder, makes them look better. Public schools are more likely to choose the AQA because it's easier, and it's easier for the teachers to get the job done. But then here's what I'm saying about so the grades that they get at the end of the day doesn't really make sense. See what I'm saying? It doesn't really make sense. And it's also confusing for kids, because then you're being asked to answer different types of questions in different papers. Like I said, if you're doing Edexcel specification, see what I'm saying? Specification, like who decides these things as well is what I want to know. And who decides that they were the best? What's the research? Where was the research to show that this is the most effective way of learning? Because if we're going to go with the research across the board, and I'm seeing it also happening in the United States, right? But it happens here, right? Where now it's becoming more and more uncommon for kids to just go through all the way up to primary school, get into secondary, and then complete their GCSEs successfully, then complete their A-level for vocational grade, and then successfully get through 3 years at university and graduate at 21. That's becoming less and less and less and less common. It's becoming more common that people are graduating a lot longer because people are having to retake years, people are having to do these detours, people are having to take a year off because they might have got the right grades in this subject but not the right grades in that subject. Universities, again, and it was like this when I qualified to go into university, and it's like this now, right? It's an ongoing issue. The universities are accepting kids below the entry requirements that they have, right? And again, entry requirements is actually important because you need to be able to be at a certain level if you want to be able to do certain jobs with certain things, right? So for example, one of the reasons why we had to do in biology, which I hated, by the way, microscope drawings. And we did the Welsh specifications. That's just another specification. So imagine I'm learning 3 different subjects when I was doing my A-levels. I'm doing 3 different subjects. I'm doing maths, chemistry, biology, and further maths, right? But I was doing biology, I was doing the Welsh board specification. Chemistry, I was doing Edexcel. And then maths, I was doing OCR, MEI. And the MEI part is like a different type to what the OCR was. And then every year the specification is changing also, or every couple of years or however many years. So then the teachers are constantly having to change their stuff and be like, okay, what's the adjustment now? And that takes away a lot of time because again, as a teacher, the more you can focus on taking kids through the same process, the more you can hone your accuracy. And I honestly think that that's why the government keeps changing stuff and making it harder, because there was a period just before I was, I was at school where like people were doing really well for a couple of years, like better than what people would have thought we would be doing. And so now it's like, oh no, too many people are doing too well. So we have to make it harder. We have to make it harder. Like these exams are harder than the exams I did. I can say that. And the teaching methods are what is the problem. Like I said, You're teaching kids, oh, you need to impress an examiner. An examiner based on an exam board that was created by who know who, created by God knows who. Sorry, that's what I want to say. Right? Taught by, again, all of these different things. It's like, why are we doing this? What? Because that's what I'd always wonder in school myself. I'd be like, why are we doing this? They're like, oh, impress the examiner, to press the exam board, to impress the examiner. I'm like, what do I care about the examiner? Also, I'm now having to like impress 3 different kinds of examiners from 3 different kinds of specifications. And what does any of that have to do with just the basics of learning chemistry, learning maths, learning biology, learning whatever? It's insane. And then the parents don't know anything about this, because when a lot of parents were doing their education, mind you, this didn't exist, because again, the whole country would be doing the whole thing like what used to happen in primary school. And the funny thing is, once kids actually manage to get to things like university and stuff, they all of a sudden are way more capable than they thought. You know why? Because they're assessed in a completely different way. They're assessed by people who are actively working or teaching in those fields, right? Because that's why I have university lecturers releasing papers and stuff. I think that's part of important. I think all teachers should be required to be active in some way in their industry that they're teaching, so that they can actually teach from a place of like being up to date with what's going on in the world. Also to hone their skills. Like I have to hone my own skills. Some of my time I spend restudying as well, topics myself, to make sure that, yes, I could stand there and I could just know the answers and fight and whatever, and just tell them this and follow whatever, regurgitate. Oh my gosh. So one of the kids that I was teaching before had previously been in a private school, right? And the private school, the private school was doing? Playing videos from YouTube. So my thinking here, just to throw it out there, is how is it that parents are paying like 30,000, well, actually this student in particular, the parents are paying like 7,000 per term, right? How is it their parents are paying that amount of money to go into a classroom where a teacher is standing there and playing a YouTube video? And this is a lot what was going on during COVID as well. And in some areas I can understand, because it's a lot to keep up with. It's a lot of changes. It's a lot of this and that. As a teacher, like I said, the specification is changing. They change this, they change that. So if I have a whole set of all my lessons, all my worksheets, everything that I've organized for a particular age group, whatever, and the government decides to change it whenever they decide to change it, as they do, that means a lot of time I could be spending going back through and reviewing and improving my methods that I already have. I end up just having to update the information for, again, God knows who and God knows why. And this is what the younger people are noticing. That's why I like working with kids, because I think there's so much more logical thinking than adults. Adults just say, oh, this is just what we do. I'm like, some traditions need to die. Some things are no longer relevant to the society we're living in. That's the truth. Some things are just no longer relevant. Some things are no longer working because the times have changed. The times have changed significantly. Again, why are we not including? This is why education technology is becoming a big thing. A lot of teachers are leaving normal education to move into ed tech. A lot of people are developing software and games and online things for kids. A lot of kids feel today, why do I have to sit in an hour and a half lesson or an hour lesson or all these lessons or be in school all day when I can watch a 10-minute video on YouTube that teaches me more than I got in that entire 1 hour lesson? And then if they get bored, and then if they're now talking to their friends, because I was one of those kids as well. I remember when I was in maths at school, what I used to do, this is literally what me and my friends used to do in maths. You wouldn't believe it, right? I don't know how we got away with it, but anyways, what we used to do is I would come into maths, I'd let the teacher talk for the explanation at the start, and I would whiz through the questions and get them done. I'd be like, job done in like 10 minutes. I was like, the rest of the time, this is me time. And then me and my friends used to play 21 Dares for the rest of the lesson, because we organized our tables, because we asked the teacher, can we organize our tables so we can work in a group? We've already finished the work. We finished the work, and then we would sit there playing 21 Dares for the rest of the 50 minutes of the lesson. Because I've done the work. What else do you want me to do? You said this is the learning objectives for today. The learning objectives are done. Looking back, I'm thinking that's quite sassy. But I was, because I'm like, it's boring and it's done. It's like when I was in English, the same thing. My teacher would be like, she was a Canadian woman. My goodness. Bless her. She's a lovely lady. But my goodness. When we would be writing answers, and she asked questions like, explain how the mood is conveyed in the description of the scene in chapter 12 of The Great Expectations. Don't even get me started on my issues with why were we doing The Great Expectations with Miss Havisham acting wild and crazy and horrifically scary as a young person, of Mice and Men where a dude shoots his best friend in the back of the head. Inspector Calls where starts out by somebody who drinks bleach, right? Of Mice and Men, which is about the Holocaust, and the little boy, not of Mice and Men, what's that one I'm thinking of? The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, right? I'm remembering all these books as an adult. I'm thinking, I honestly think kids should be able to choose whatever books they want to read, something that's relevant to their life, and then be asked all the same things so they can still do comprehension. They can still be asked the same questions about how is such and such conveyed, how is whatever, right? It can be age appropriate and also informative. We're killing like 10 birds with one stone just by that alone. Instead of sitting in a classroom and reading a book as a class about all these heinous, crazy whatevers we're reading, why not gather the kids together and take a trip to the library? Listen, I think it's so sad that libraries are getting lost. How fun would it be to like take a group of the kids and every term, we all go down to the library and we all pick a book that we like, right? And obviously then the teachers, the adults, the parents confirm, look through the book to make sure that it is what it is supposed to be. Tell me why there was books that my 13-year-old brother was telling me he's not 13 anymore, but when he was reading books about lesbians having sex in school, right? No, take them to the library, take them to find books that they like and do all the same tactics. Do the comprehension questions, do whatever, ask them whatever. Get them intrigued and interested, like, why did you choose this book? Write in however many words or whatever about why you like this book. Talk about your favorite chapter and this and that and the other. Or other tasks, like instead of just writing these random arbitrary letters, this is why I think will work so fun with homeschooling, right? Get them to actually write letters to people, like in real life, right? And then we can get the community involved, right? And then they can learn how they write differently to a friend, how they write differently if they're going to be writing to apply for a job. All these different things, like make it real life, because then these things they can actually do for real life. They can actually write letters to each other as friends. That would be fun. And then get them in the post. How fun would that be for the kids to be doing stuff like that? Or if you have like a kid who has a particular type of thing that they want to do that they've seen, like, I don't know, maybe, they grew up and they've always seen electricians and they think being an electrician sounds like so cool. Well, opportunity, write to the electrician applying for a job. You know what I'm saying? And then we can organize as the adult population. Because this is one of the things I want to do with my kids. Like, if you want to do something, yes, I'm going to find you the experience. I'm going to find you the person. I don't care. You know what I mean? They'll be engaged because they're things that they're interested in. They can tell you what they like, what they don't like, why they like it, why they don't like it. And oftentimes the things that they like, it's because they're good at them. So if they're good at them, they're going to be competent workers. Because we have the other side of the problem, which is that so many employers today are bothering with things like a lot of these qualifications, degrees and stuff, because they're realizing people are walking through the door with a degree, but they can't actually do the work. They're not actually smart. People might have been the A-star student or the A+ student all of their career, but when they become a surgeon, finally, right, because everyone wants to send their kid to med school and being a doctor and a lawyer, nothing wrong with those jobs, right? Some of them, they get there and they can't do it because now it's not just about regurgitating whatever you're supposed to say to impress the examiner. Now it's about, you need to apply your logical thinking when you're dealing with patients. That's why it's common with doctors that pharmacists have to correct the prescriptions. Even nurses have to correct the prescriptions that doctors have given. like junior doctors. There's even a week, I can't remember what they call it. The first week when junior doctors go into work, there's a week for it because there's a spike in just things going wrong. And there's nothing, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with that because they're new, you know what I'm saying? But the point is, what is it actually doing? Like, what are we achieving here? Or even politics, right? Instead of shoving political ideas and whatever, how about just educate them about how the world works and let them naturally form? Like, I remember one thing that I loved at my university that I thought was really cool is some girl was studying, I think, international relations, and she decided to set up a United Nations, like, society, and they would do like United Nations things. They would travel to different countries in the world, and they're actually educating themselves. Like, these are things to actually educate them. So educate the kids to be a United Nations for a day. You know what I mean? You're representing this, you're representing that. Go and find out about this. Go and find out about that. Come and state your case. Because the other thing with kids is when you give them responsibilities, they like to feel responsible and they like to feel like people take them seriously. So when you give them responsibilities, they take them seriously. When you're just barking at them about what they need to think, and you know the classic like your children should be seen and not heard, or whatever, or the hypocrisies of the do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, they're disinterested now. I would be, but give me a responsibility. Heck, I'm involved now because I got something that I need to do, that I need to contribute, and we're all here in our mini United Nations. And it's so sweet the way they take these things on, and they take them really seriously. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think is being lost in the younger generations. I feel like I could talk about this for literally forever. Like, I could talk forever about it. It's the one good thing I have to say, as much as this job stresses me the heck out all day. But it really is showing me that, like, everything that the adult population, negative-wise, is saying about the younger generation is just so untrue. They're just not getting what they need to get, what they deserve to have. That's the problem. They're not being catered to the way they need to be catered to. And they're kids, so they do need to be catered to. I don't know why the adult population, like, I was thinking about this when I think about what people say when they're like, oh, you know, like the racist tweet thing and all this, and what kids say when they're kids. I'm like, kids are kids. Why are we surprised when they are reckless? Why are we surprised when they're ungrateful or they seem ungrateful? Like, parents be like, oh, it's so nice that your kid is so thankful. My kids don't realize. I'm like, of course they don't realize how hard it is. They're children. They're children. Have you seen that video? I don't know if you guys seen the video. There was like a video of a kid, and there was like a cupcake, right? And then like next to it, there was like $100 or something. And the kid was asked, which of these would you like? And they took the cupcake. And I was like, exactly. And people are like, this is what we need to remember about children because they're just children. Exactly. They need to be led. They need to be guided. They need to be nurtured. They need to be disciplined. The amount of times I've heard parents say, oh, I didn't do this because I let them do this because they enjoy it. Like, I watched a lot of these series. I like watching these type of like daytime television not daytime television shows, but these shows where they do these documentaries of like kids who have like lost all of their teeth due to tooth decay. And I remember one of the videos, right, the mum was like, oh, but like her kid literally had sweets, like candy next to his bed. He's like 4, right? Because when he wakes up, the first thing he likes to do is eat lollipops and eat sweets. And then when the doctors and when the dentist was asking the parent, like, what is going on here? It's like, oh, but he likes it. Excuse me? Oh, but they like it. Oh, but they like it. Yeah, we're the ones who have to figure it out. Like, that's why a lot of us are underestimating. A lot of adults today are underestimating how seriously some of your parents took parenting you. Because I truly think the generation that came before the generation before millennials, so I can never remember what generation that is, right? A lot of those generations were a lot more strict about certain things. Certain things were a treat that you only got after you ate your actual meal, after you did this, after you did that. If you're going to do this, we have balance. You need to also, I don't care if you don't want to do it. That's the point. You do something for them that they don't want to do, but you know better. Like I was saying to you, and I explained to the kids, I'm like, listen, I know you're not interested in this lesson, and I can see why you think it's boring. And to be honest, it is boring. But this is what we need to do to get to where we want to get to. So the sooner we do it, the sooner it's over. Can we manage that? And then they're like, you know what? Fair enough. They're in. They'll do it. Because again, you explain to them and you talk to them. Like, it really frustrated me when I was watching this, and it's a really good series. I recommend everybody watches. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. It's called it's about babies. I wish I could remember what it was called. But basically, it's a whole long series about how people are talking about how babies are so much more capable than we think that they are. And there's all these studies where people are basically realizing that babies are not just born with blank minds, that they are born with all the capabilities of everything. And the more you believe they can do, this is why a lot of kids who get homeschooled progress more quickly. Or why kids where their parents talk to them as people from when they're a baby, they develop their speech quicker because they're being talked to constantly. They're learning how to say words. Or the parents who pay attention to the little things that they do and respond to the little things that they do. And then the kid, do you see what I'm saying? Like, so when people were looking at the research, they're like shocked that babies are so capable. I'm like, why are we surprised? Why are we surprised? That's how it was always supposed to work. They are born to us, for us to look after, for us to nurture, and for us to like teach and guide in wisdom and whatever, and discipline. That's our job. When we do that, they thrive. They thrive. They thrive, and they can do more than you could possibly imagine that they could do. Than they can think that they could do. And you know when kids can see that they are more capable than they even thought they were, and you believe in them more than they believe in themselves, or you actually believe in them, it encourages them to want to keep going with the learning, because then they're like, oh, I'm actually good at this. It's actually not. It actually feels good to like feel like I can do some stuff in this world. And I don't think that the adult population recognizes, I get it. Listen, when it's after hours and it's the adults being the adults and the kids are not around, go ahead and complain to your heart's content and talk about the struggles and whatever. But the other problem we have now with social media, especially because so many kids are left online, just unsupervised these days, is they get to see that what all the adults have to say about them, all the negativity. The negativity gets to me, and I'm 27. I'm 27 and it gets to me. Oh, you young people. People say to me, you young people. I'm like, if this is how what I'm dealing with the decisions I've made in my life, and I'm doing what I'm doing, right? How much worse for a kid to be hearing all these things, all these complaints, even some of these weird, I don't know, I have some interesting thoughts and feelings actually I'm still developing about these whole family, a lot of these family channels, especially the ones where the mums are like openly talking about their kids. Because I'm like, but if your kids know that their mum's famous on TikTok and you're there complaining on TikTok, it's a bit difficult if the kids, the kids at school can recognize you talking about their kid, and it's embarrassing. And then one day they're going to look back and realize that the whole world has a bunch of opinions about them that they never got a chance to know anything about, and all of this. And it's like a lot of this stuff is new, and we're going to come to a point at some stage in the next 10 to 15 years where everything's just going to hit. Everything's going to hit. The young people are going to get to an age where they're going to get to respond. Because somebody even said this in a podcast the other day. They were like, what we haven't gone through yet as a society is seeing what a lot of these young people who have been plastered on the internet are going to say about how they felt about that happening when they become an adult and they're at a place in their life where they can actually like assess the situation for themselves. And it's going to be horrifying for them because all their business is all over the internet. All the places where they should have been protected and their privacy should have been kept, and the benefits that the older generation, like, could people be so quick to say, especially people like me, like, you put all your stuff on the internet, whatever, you don't know how. I'm like, some of you are very quick to judge a lot of people, because when you were a child, when you were young, when you were in your 20s, when you were a teenager, when you were a toddler, there wasn't social media. There wasn't the whole world having an opportunity to have an opinion on you. There wasn't adults plastering you all over the internet and your business. So respectfully, you sound tone deaf. And so I'm saying, this is what Generation Alpha is realizing. So I'm saying the Generation Alpha is too smart for this education system. They're like, none of this is making sense to them. And they're young enough and have exposure enough to enough information to know that this doesn't make any sense. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there because I could talk about this forever. But yeah. I just wanted to say that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are we going to do? When are we going to wake up and realize that we need to make some serious changes? This is what I've been thinking about. This I've been thinking about all year. what are we really going to do as an adult population to make a serious change? Not just go and talk to the schools about whatever. No, we need to the system needs to be rewritten and redone altogether. And to be completely honest, the adult population needs a wake-up call right now. On that note, if life's a game, let's play to win. God bless you. God loves you. I love you. I'll see you in my next one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys, because we got to step up for the kids. Come on now. We got to step up and we got to have some empathy. Just because it was hard for us, I would never wish my life on my worst enemy. I would never wish my life on the younger generation. In fact, I will only truly feel successful when I get to my old age and I can see that the kids that I have taught and my own children haven't had to live the life that I've lived. That for me is my win in life. That's why I can't wait to be a grandma. That is my actual win in life. If I can look back and say, you know what? I done the damn thing.